Yes, I would like to, especially for this source sustainability session, I would like to invite the esteemed panelists on the dais. May I take this opportunity to request all the panel members to please join me on the dais. So first, I would like to request Shri Andalib Razi, Commissioner and Secretary PHE Meghalaya. Sir, if you are here, please join the dais, please. Our second panel member is Dr. Debashish Chakravarti, Scientist, Agriculture Meteorology, ICR. Mr. Debashish Chakravarti, may I request you to please join the dais. Our third panel member is Shri Venkat K. Swear, General Manager, Meghalaya Basin Development Authority. Please, if you are here, please join the session. The fourth panel member is Kumari Irafulin Dingdo, Joint Mission Director, State Rural Employment Society. Ma'am, if you are here, please join us on the dais. Yeah. And the last and the fifth panel member is Shri Nipendra Kumar Sharma, Chief Engineer, PHE, Government of Assam. Sir, please. I would also request to all of you, if you can just come forward, so that would really be good. I know it is last session and we have hardly, numbers are really less, but yeah, I would expect that people, as the session begins, people would join it. But yeah, I would request you to please come forward. Yes, we all know water scarcity is something that is actually impacting almost all sectors, whether it is drinking water, it is agriculture, the urban, rural water supply, everything is becoming sort of quite challenging. It is becoming because of the long-term insecurity, because of climate changes, because of competing demand, etc. In case of India, as we have seen that almost 820 million population across 12 river basins are having access of water that is almost 1,000 cubic meter. That is the threshold for water scarcity. So situation is not really very positive, but yes, the positive is we do have a good rainfall, we do have enough knowledge, we do have technology. It is all about efficient water management, especially towards source sustainability to ensure water security for different purposes. Today we are having a sort of varied panel members. So first I would like to invite Shri Andalib Razi, sir, who is Secretary PHE. And before I hand over to him, I would just like to remind you one particular sentence in the morning, what Chief Minister has mentioned that in last couple of years, Meghalaya has actually made a tremendous progress as far as drinking water access is concerned, from almost 1% to 70%, and by end of this year, they are planning to reach to 90%. But the story doesn't end here, because that is the only one. Ensuring access to functional household tap connection is one part of a story, but the important thing is how actually you can sustain the sources. So with these few words, I would just request sir to please share your thoughts. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone present here, Mr. Umar, my esteemed panelists, and ladies and gentlemen. I know it's been a long day, and I'm pretty sure you don't want to sit through another tedious presentation, so I'll try to keep it as short and as relevant as possible. So I am, ladies and gentlemen, I am before you in my capacity as Commissioner Secretary for the PHE Public Health Engineering Department of Government of Meghalaya, which is looking after water supply and rural sanitation in the state. I also happen to be the Mission Director for Jal Jeevan Mission. As Mr. Asad rightly pointed out, when the mission started, Meghalaya only had 4,550 household tap connections out of a total of 6,50,000 households in the state. It was 0.7%. Today, that number stands at 4,84,000. So I'll come to all those details. Next slide, please. Who's running the slides here? So since I've clarified my role that I come in my capacity as the Mission Director for JJM and Commissioner Secretary for PHE Department, which looks after water supply in the state. So as regarding source sustainability, for me personally as a department and as an individual, it's a very focused definition I'd like to think of it, is which is source sustainability is related to availability of drinking water of prescribed quantity and quality to the citizens, to all those people we have provided tap connections with. Then related to that is that the availability of adequate water at source for the entire design period of the water supply scheme which we have put in place. So the key here is that we are providing in the rural sector, we are providing functional household tap connections, and it should not be just an engineering project where taps, pipes, taps, treatment plants, tanks, they're all set up, and at the end of the day when there is no water in the tap. So that is, for a lack of a better word, I would say that it's a persistent nightmare for me these days, that in some immediate or some intermediate future, when there are taps all over the state, but there is no water in them. It is actually a nightmarish situation. It is a frightening situation, not only for the person who's there in the house, but also for the government, for the department, for the organization, and the civil society as a whole. So the idea is to ensure that the taps which we are putting up at the money which is being provided by Government of India and the state government both should have water in them at the end of the day. Why I think through the day's deliberations, these issues would have come up. It's a basic human right, and water is directly correlates to issues of health, poverty reduction, education, food security, several such things. It's related to the SDG goals, the 6.4, 6.5, 6.6, 6A and B. They specifically talk of sustainability, and sustainability of sources is related to that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do have a slight background in economics, so I like to see things in terms of demand and supply. How this sustainability relates to the demand and supply of water. I'll come to that eventually. Next slide, please. So just a brief background for Meghalaya. For the rural areas, there we have 6,470 villages, which for a state of its size is almost 3 times. For example, Manipur has 2,000, a similar state size and topography has 2,000 odd villages. Meghalaya has almost 3 times those number of villages. We have 6,51,412 households. And the service standards with the introduction of JJM have gone up from rural areas from 40 liter per capita per day to 55 LPCD. The safe water standards remain what they are, BIS 10,500. The service delivery model in the state, earlier also we were providing piped water supply to the villages, but the service delivery model used to be the public stand post predominantly. It has now changed. It has come to the functional household tap connections, and Jal Jeevan Mission is the mission in the entire country and even in Meghalaya, which is providing this functional household tap connections with the prescribed quality and quantity of water. Next slide, please. So this is just an overview from where we started and where we are today. As on 15th August 2019, you can see the entire state was less than 10%. It was in orange. In fact, number of connections were only 0.7%. And as of today, as of 9th February, we have a majority of the districts in deep blue, which are over 75% connections, and rest are well on their way. So 4,84,000 connections as of today, and we are well on course to achieve 90% by March. All the schemes are ongoing by end of March. Next slide. So in urban, we have almost 22 urban centers with different classifications from 1 to 5, run by municipal boards, by cantonment board, by town committees, by census towns. There are several types of schemes being implemented for water supply under Amrut, NESET, State Plan, NLCPR. The service standards in urban areas is from 70 to 135 LPCD. 70 is for the peri-urban areas and 135 for the purely urban areas. There are 1,91,817 households. Out of this, more than 1 lakh are in the greater Shillong area alone. Next slide, please. So in Meghalaya, we have different type of sources for water supply schemes. The surface, the groundwater aquifer, and the spring sources. I've just given a breakup of what are the sources which are being used for water supply scheme. More than 80% are surface sources, which include our springs. So my esteemed panelists would deliberate on it further and for general consumption of the audience. Herein lies our problem. We are on more than 80% of our schemes are dependent on surface sources. In groundwater, Meghalaya is in the green throughout the entire state, except few small patches here and there. According to the latest Central Groundwater Board, we are water surplus as far as groundwater is concerned. But we are aware of the topography of the state. That is one reason. And because of the topography, pumping out water, a groundwater source, and then distributing it further makes it highly expensive and not cost effective at all. So groundwater in most areas is something which we could not depend upon because of power availability, power cost, and eventually the high cost it would entail for the consumer at the delivery point. So we are kind of forced to depend on surface sources, on springs and rivers, and therein lies our vulnerability as in the terms of ensuring sustainability of these water supply schemes which are dependent on the surface sources. So next slide, please. So having delineated my problem for the consideration of the panel, and I see there Vankit from MBDA and Kongyarap, they are all departments very majorly involved in addressing this concern of the water supply department as sustainability of sources. So what are the threats? I'm saying very obvious stuff. All of you are experts in this field and you are very well aware, but just to give pointers for the discussion, I have listed out a few points. The demand side is obviously the growth in population and economic activities which depend on more and more availability of water, including agriculture and horticulture practices, industrial practices which require much higher volume of water than hitherto being used. So which is actually drawing more water and depleting our sources which would be available for human use for drinking and other such purposes. The supply side, over the last 3 years itself, we have seen several incidents of irregular rain and unseasonal rain, which has affected our sources. So climate change is an overarching umbrella under which all these events we can classify. Other problem is pollution of these sources. Since they are surface sources, they are vulnerable to activities which pollute them and make them unfit for use as a source for drinking water. A general environmental degradation on account of deforestation, other related activities. So addressing these threats is crucial to ensure a resilient and equitable water future. It's not an exhaustive list. I think an exhaustive list would probably emerge at the end of deliberations of this entire conclave, but it's just a few pointers I have flagged. Next slide, please. So strategies for sustainability for the water source. I again reiterate that I am speaking from the point of view of the water supply department, the public health engineering department, as a secretary of the department, and my focus as of now is on drinking water and to ensuring that the taps that we have put up are have running water in them as with the prescribed quality and quantity. So there are two strategies for demand side management of water would be introduction of water conservation practices at individual and community level, and which would entail serious behavioral change, because Meghalaya generally, as the perception is water is supposed to be no restriction of availability of water, but on the ground reality, and because of the topographical uniqueness of the place, the availability of water actually becomes an issue. So, and there is an awareness regarding all these that the conservation practices should be there at the community level, at the individual level. So the need is to mainstream those practices and make it the norm. The other aspect which I can think of is promoting water efficient technologies which would require less offtake of water. Then one major problem which the department has faced, which is specific to more relevant to urban areas like Shillong, which is reducing the distribution losses. So distribution losses because of the old infrastructure in place, especially in Shillong and also in Tura. So the two major urban centers, there are significant distribution losses which are higher than what have been prescribed at acceptable levels by the CEPHEO organization. So one aspect would be to reduce this water losses to an acceptable level. Will require revamping our infrastructure and check the leakages, etc. As they call in the technical terms, it's the UFW, the unaccounted for water, that has to come down. So one thing which, especially for rural water supply, is kind of not many people are ready to confront this issue, is to treat water as any other utility, as power. You pay for what you use, and then you regulate the use through pricing. Higher you consume, more you pay. Same it is being done for water, and also regulation of wastage of water through enforcement. It is something just food for thought. It's not something we've really thought upon, and especially in rural areas, it would, I know it would be extremely difficult for a government to actually implement utility concept for water supply, but it is something I, as an individual, do feel that we'll have to eventually come to this model if we want to regulate the demand for water, where people will be careful about how much they use depending on how much they'll have to pay for it. Next slide. In Meghalaya, two of my panelists are from the government of Meghalaya here, and they are deeply involved in these activities. So under the leadership of our Honorable CM and ACS Water Resources, and the Meghalaya, as we call it, we taking a whole of government approach. So all relevant departments are involved in this endeavor to ensure sustainability of our sources. The different departments I have listed out is water resources, there public health engineering from where I come, it's also there's the soil and water conservation department, CNRD, forest environment, MBDA. So Vanket and Kongyara, they'll probably highlight in more detail the activities being undertaken by their organization. So I'll just quickly run through it. I've taken enough time. Next slide. So these are some of the activities, community-led landscape management project, which I think Vanket will talk in detail, the payment of ecosystem services, watershed management, the forest conservation efforts, different activities by soil department. Next slide, please. This is the steps, the several steps are being taken in the state for protection of ecosystem, and the relevant departments will talk about it regarding protecting watersheds, which is being done by water sources, preserving wetlands through forest environment department is involved in that, and maintaining forest cover. Next. There, in fact, this is another aspect which has come up for discussion in a big way, is investment in sustainability infrastructure. Government of India also through Department of Drinking Water has allowed for some investment for direct recharge structures for groundwater sources. So, and soil and water conservation departments through its check dams, infiltration galleries, rainwater harvesting structures, direct recharging of wells is being done by PHE. These are some of the steps being undertaken in the state for ensuring that the sources remain sustainable for the period they are designed for. Next, please. Water recycling and reuse is it is basically use of advanced wastewater technologies for safe recycling and reuse. And there are several sub-projects in the pipeline. In fact, in Moflang, which has our greater Shillong water supply treatment system, we've already sanctioned a project where even the treated water, the wastewater generated out of treatment of water is again being reused. So we've going to that extent. So, and several such projects are in consideration right now, but before they see the light of the day, it would be wrong on my part to list them out now. I think other departments may highlight that. Next. Next slide, please. Policy and governance, I think Water Resources Department is taking a lead in this matter. Meghalaya was the first state to come out with the state water policy in 2019, which encompassed all different areas of water, including conservation of sources, and then use of technology, which I have highlighted in my previous slides, how the state is taking steps for use of technology in using improved water and sustainability systems. Next, please. This is one important step that is being taken by the department and different departments, is engaging with the community, because the role of community is extremely important in Meghalaya. Without actually engaging with the community, you would not get very far in your efforts to have a successful sustainability program. So there are a couple of programs which have been launched by the Public Health Engineering Department under the Jal Jeevan Mission. One is the water guardians, which is we ran it over the last 2023, where different practices, traditional practices for better management of their water resources were documented all over the state, and the best practices were shared between the different communities, and there was a panel of independent judges who rated these community-led efforts, and we awarded the 3 best efforts in this direction by Honorable Chief Minister. One program which is right now ongoing is called Water Smart Kids campaign, where several schools awareness is being raised, and water and school children are being kind of trained to work as ambassadors to take this message of sustainable use of water to the community. So this program is ongoing, and we are hoping that it will culminate by sometime March, April, and we'll try to we are documenting the ongoing process, and we'll try to quantify the positive impact it has had. Next slide, please. Another aspect which I'd like to talk about is corporate responsibility. It's not corporate social responsibility as to they setting out certain amount for CSR activities. It is about industries have a huge role to play in use of water and pollution of the sources. So we're trying to engage with the industries to adopt adopting a more sustainable water management practices, the reduction of wastewater, and encouraging them to invest in technologies that minimize environmental impact, especially on water. And then we'll be able to address this issue better if there is a transparent reporting on water consumption and pollutant discharge, and that will also help accountability amongst the different stakeholders. Next slide, please. Another issue which is being led by the Water Resources Department, which is in the state, led by ACS Shakil sir, is to have a data repository for all water-related activities in the state. The State Water Informatics Centers has been set up, and which would monitor both water quality, quantity, usage patterns, help identify trends, and assess the effectiveness of conservation measure, and anticipate and find solutions for the potential issues. Remote sensing and satellite imagery is also being utilized, and both basin and water sources are working in this direction in a big way. I'm sure our panelists from basin would be able to elaborate on that. Next, please. So it's just a general conclusion. It's but obvious that it's a collective responsibility ensuring sustainability, and the government. It's not just the government, the industry, the businesses, community, individuals, all have to be involved in this process. And this is how I'll sum up. I've taken more than the time that I was supposed to take, and I hope the pointers which I have put for consideration would elicit some thoughts from the panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for a detailed and insightful presentation. And you have rightly actually initiated your discussion in terms of water security, that availability of adequate water at source for entire design duration is something that is much more critical. You have also highlighted a couple of important points, especially around water efficient technologies in urban context, reducing the distribution losses. And one more point which you indicated, that regulation of pricing is something as a concept for utilities can give a thought, especially to minimize the wastage of water. So that was another your thought. But yeah, what you summed up, that is really critical, that it is not only government who can actually ensure source sustainability. All key stakeholders, including communities, they must come together to ensure sustainability of our drinking water sources. And Meghalaya has done excellent progress, especially in the last couple of years. Thank you so much, sir, for this presentation. Thank you. With this, I would like to invite other panel members. So I would just start with Dr. Debashish Chakravarti, scientist at ICR, to share his thoughts and presentation. Dr. Debashish.
Good evening to all of you, respected moderator, honorable panelists, dignitaries of the dais, and my colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. As you all know that water is elixir of life, and we are sitting in Meghalaya, and it is abode of cloud, and from cloud only rainfall comes and the water. Next slide. So agriculture is the sector which uses most of the water, as it gives the most important commodity, that is food, to us, without which we cannot live. So I am Debashish. I am a scientist in agriculture meteorology working in ICR, means Indian Council of Agricultural Research at Umiam, Meghalaya. And my topic will be on water availability and its efficient utilization in hill agriculture, what experience we have from ICR NEH. Next slide, please. So climate change is one of the most important factors which will be governing, which is already governing the disasters related to hydrometeorology and also the availability of water per se. And as agriculture is the sector which consumes or utilizes most of the water, so it will be affected directly by climate change, firstly. Second is, there is the competition from other sectors. So agricultural water availability will decrease. So at first we will see what is the condition of rainfall and water in this northeast region. Next slide, please. So we are talking about northeastern region, and if you see that compared to all other parts of India, northeastern rainfall pattern is completely different. That we should always keep in our mind while discussing all water related things. That's why we should always think differently while considering northeast. Next slide, please. And if you see, though we get, in case of monsoon, this is an analysis of about more than 140 years of data. In case of monsoon, though the rainfall of northeastern region is quite high, but in last 3 decades, we are seeing lots of drought-like situation or negative rainfall or deficit of rainfalls. And that too is happening on different, means deficit areas are increasing. Next slide, please. If you see from this slide that compared to 1901 to 1930, in the recent past decades, means 1991 to 2015, the coefficient of variation, that means uncertainty of rainfall in northeast, has doubled. So we know that our crops are needing water, but it needs water at the right time, at right amount. If we have total amount, suppose 100 liter of water needed for some crop, but it is not that 100 liter, if we give in one day, it will work. So we need it in a particular time. That if uncertainty increases and our crop is not getting its water at a particular point of time, the critical growth stage when it needs, it is of no use. Next slide, please. And temperature is also increasing. Though temperature will not, still it is not at that level, that mean temperature is going up to 30, 32, which is not that high as compared to other parts of India. But this temperature increase will increase the evaporation demand. That means it will increase the water loss. Next slide, please. And if we see about extremes, these have many impacts on disasters, as we have already talked about disaster. As the extremes are increasing in this region, it will have impacts on disasters, and warm days, warm nights, diurnal temperature range, these are increasing, which will be having profound impact on crop physiology, which may impact its flowering and critical growth stages. Next slide, please. Rainfall extremes are also increasing, and as I told, most importantly, the consecutive dry days. That means how many dry days we get consecutively. That means how many days there is no rainfall and high sunshine. These days are increasing, which is important for crops and important for this region. Next slide, please. And if we see what will happen in the future, then we can see that under different climate change scenario, what already was discussed in the last session, maximum temperature will increase, minimum temperature will increase in a higher rate. What it will cause is at the night time there is no photosynthesis, but plant will respire. That means whatever the storage material is there, it will be expensed in respiration. That means the net amount available for translocation to grains will decrease. That means it will have impact on our yield. And the rainfall will increase, though the uncertainty in rainfall or variability will increase. That means it will have impact both in higher rainfall and as well as in lower impact. Next slide, please. So what to do? What is our experience and ICAR? How can we use this water efficiently to use in hilly ecosystem for a sustainable agriculture? Next slide, please. If we can see this graph, especially in Meghalaya, this is a water surplus and deficit. There is a dichotomy. For 6 months, like May to almost October, there are lots of rainfall and evaporation or demand is less. So water surplus is there, and sometimes this surplus is also causing, means affecting the yield, means it is decreasing the yield. And another part, November to April, it is water is deficit, nowhere water is there. That's why if we do rainwater conservation, it is the most appropriate thing where we have lots of rainwater and we can do it. And there are 5 strategies which all know, but we have demonstrated it in field condition, and we have tailored the technologies for hill agriculture of northeastern India. We have watershed approach if we want to do in big area. In little bit smaller area, in water harvesting pond or micro watershed approach, then rainwater harvesting at individual field approach, roof water harvesting at individual field approach, and in situ rainwater harvesting. Next slide, please. So watershed approach, as many departments are doing in a big way, like water resource department in government of Meghalaya. So this involves a community-led structure where we can develop community reservoirs, government, non-government agencies participation, but it involves lots of heavy investments. And in this, ICR has developed different farming system models, like how to use our hilly slopes very effectively in a environmentally sustainable way. Like in the left side, that yellow color figure, we can see that upland, very hard, steep soils should be used for forest, then horticulture, then agriculture. Then we can construct some pond, and like these models can be very much useful for our hilly terrains. Next slide, please. This is another model which we have developed for micro watershed. Here what we do, from a micro watershed, we construct a pond, big pond in the downstream side. You can see downstream side, a big pond is there. So we harvest the runoff water in that big pond, and during the winter or lean season, we pump that water through a solar pumping to the upside one small micro water harvesting structure. And from that pond, we are through gravity-fed drip irrigation, we are cultivating crops in the terraces. Along with that, we can also rear fish. Piggery is a big sector, and people out here, they generally keep pigs in their home, so we can use piggery, and through this, we can generate a year-round and good income from this source. Next slide, please. As you all know that rainfall is happening here in a very big amount, and we can conserve this rainfall for our kitchen garden or small area like 400 to 500 meter square area. So these are called micro water harvesting structure, like jal kunds, these are called. So we can make this jal kund of 30 to 35,000 liters. And if you see, this jal kund can be used for giving life-saving irrigation or for cultivating crops in kitchen gardens. Next slide, please. Roof water harvesting can be another good option where we can construct this roof water harvesting strategies, and we can harvest this water in the Jalkund. And through these simple interventions, we can generate about 15 to 20,000 rupees through crop plus pre-gari, or 12,000, about 10 to 12,000 rupees plus crop plus poultry, which additional income. Next slide, please. In situ water harvesting strategies are very important, like use of mulches, soil incorporation of organic manure, conservation tillage. And in this region, after rice, especially medium to lowland soil, there are lots of moisture. So we can use that, and those are kept generally fallow. And you can use that moisture to grow crops like toria, lentil, which can provide about, in this condition, if we go for zero tillage, you can clearly see the crop differences. And we can have about 12 to 18% more moisture in these fields, and the yield will increase by about 20 to 28%. Next slide. So lentil, pea, toria, this crop has been grown in this type of lowland fallow area with zero tillage in mean altitudes of all these northeastern states, and these crops are coming very well. Next slide, please. Along with these NRM strategies, means natural resource management strategies, ICR is also considering development or identification of stress tolerant varieties. Like this is one example, one aerobic dhan, means aerobic rice variety, which requires about 60% less water. So this type of strategies also ICR is following, and I think this will be good initiative for future, where we will have less water for left for agricultural point of view. Next slide, please. We have also demonstrated these all technologies in farmer field, and as we were talking about community-led things, like community are completely involved in all these things, and we have developed and demonstrated these in different farmer field, and they are growing these technologies in a big way. Next slide. So from this, we can conclude that rainwater harvesting, especially in situ and ex situ, should be promoted in a big way, as we have lots of soil moisture in this region, especially during Rabi season in rice fallows. Development of new varieties for higher yields, not only higher yields, but resilience to water stress will remain key, and research organizations, including ICR, is investing heavily in this area. Renewable and clean energy should be promoted for utilization of harvested water. Those we are from Meghalaya, we know that after November, it is not like Delhi or North India situation where it is very much cloudy or foggy. Here we get a lot of sunshine. So we can use this renewable energy or solar to pump this water, harvested water, and use gravity-fed irrigation. Then modern technologies like remote sensing, drone, simulation models, geographical information system, artificial intelligence, these should be used effectively for site suitability mapping of these agro-technologies which we have, but these are not applicable to all the regions. So we should map it properly, and I think government of Meghalaya have taken very good steps, and they are going in this direction. And ultimately we can say that innovations in agriculture technology, policy, institutions, this will be the key for achieving the sustainable development goals, and maintaining our, not only maintaining our food and nutritional security, but despite climate change, but I think it will be making India as one of the global powerhouses. And today I think by this time you have all got the information that M.S. Swaminathan, Professor M.S. Swaminathan, the father of green revolution of India, he has been awarded with Bharat Ratna. So this is his contribution, that India was from food deficit nation to food surplus nation. Now it's an exporter for food, and I think for a developed country and to have global ambitions like India, we should be food sufficient. Not only food sufficient, we should be a leader in this respect. And I think India, we have, especially Meghalaya, we have all capabilities to stand alone in this direction. Next slide, please. So I acknowledge all the farmers with whom we have worked, and directors, scientists, and staff of ICR. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Debashish. Quite insightful and useful presentation. Few things that you have really emphasized, and that is a sort of kind of key takeaway for us, is basically the bridging the gap between end users and researchers. How ICR has efficiently implemented some of the community outreach activities, and how those activities, whether it is micro watershed, or it is integrated water resource management, how that is actually benefiting to the farming community, or in general to rural communities. So that is something that is really commendable, and others should also learn from it. Thank you so much for your presentation. Now I would like to invite Shri Venkat Keswar, General Manager, Meghalaya Basin Development Authority. Sir, over to you.
Thank you to the moderator and my member panelists here on the dais. So what I'm going to cover will be a little bit different. I'm not going to spend too much time on initiatives. Well, of course, I'll be highlighting some of those. But I also want to speak a bit more about what makes these things possible. You know, the platform that needs to be there behind all the efforts that we are making. And mostly I'm going to talk a bit about the institutions that have been working in these sectors, why these institutions were needed, and then some of the approaches that we had undertaken to be able to pull off a lot of the initiatives that we have been implementing in the state. So first of all, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Venkat Keswar. I worked in an organization. We've had many panelists from the same organization, MBDA, Meghalaya Basin Development Authority. So there I worked in the capacity of officer on special duty, and also in another Section 8 company called the Meghalaya Basin Management Agency, or MBMA, where I worked as the general manager. So just to give a brief background about this MBDA and MBMA, because I think it has been mentioned quite a number of times. This organization was sort of conceptualized sometime around 2007, 2008. Back then, there was a realization that a lot of the state's dependencies are either directly or indirectly linked to water. You would have seen, like Dr. Debashish had presented, how our state is in a very funny paradox. We have lots of water, but at the same time we suffer from drought. So we're like a very wet desert kind of thing. So what happens is, we actually get, if I put a number, we get around 63 billion cubic meters of rainfall annually, out of which we are able to retain only 0.5 billion cubic meters of that. And the remaining amount, half of it flows to Bangladesh and half flows to the Brahmaputra basin. So we have a lot of water that falls on Meghalaya's surface, but we are hardly able to hold any of that, which is why we see this interesting paradox of, you come here in winter, and then if you travel around, you'll see most of the places they have this issue. So, and this particular fact, we've been able to even back it up with data. Many of the projects that we implement, the first thing that we do is we visit each and every single village, and we ask them, what are your biggest concerns? Believe it or not, 95% of the villages, their first priority is water scarcity. They want to address water scarcity. So, which is quite interesting. And everything else comes after that. Health, education, and all, they actually take, second positions to this. So with this organization that was created, there was an understanding that we have many, technical departments in the state that work across various areas. But as with most things, there are going to be gaps here and there. So the intention of having these specialized institutions like the MBDA and MBMA was to be able to plug these gaps by making institutions that are malleable, that can be flexible to adapt to whatever needs exist in the state. So that's how this organization was conceptualized. So when you look at the initiatives I'm going to see, I think this will give you that frame of context, so that you don't get confused. Like we are doing like just too many things. How do they all connect, right? So it is this underlying factor that allows us to do these kind of things. So with that, we can move to the next slide, please. Yeah. So I think some of these points have already been mentioned by our previous panelists, but again, I just want to stress on a few things here. The first one is that, again, I want to remind everyone, we are a 6th scheduled state. So what this means is we are very interesting. All the land that we have here, more than 95% is directly owned by people. So it's not under the control of the government. So which makes for a very interesting case. For some of you who are implementing many projects in the rest of the country, you would realize that getting land, that would not be much of a concern. Concern would be on project management, how do you deliver services, things like that. For us, we have to start worrying about where do we find the place to put up our interventions in the first place. So every single thing requires a lot of negotiation. You have to consult communities, you have to bring them on board, otherwise it's not going to be successful. And then there are other dynamics that comes into play. If you're going to put on community land, you better make sure that ownership, there's buy-in from communities so that they take ownership of these things. That's the only way to sustain them, right? That's why I put the 6th schedule and I even gave it a different color. And I want to show you the last point there. There was a study by NESAC sometime, they published the report in 2009, but there we saw that about 1,900 out of the 6,000 plus villages that we have, they suffer from severe degradation. Now, I'm going to show you a visualization. If you can move to the next slide, please. This is our LULC map. LULC is land use, land cover map. It basically color codes all the different portions of the map of Meghalaya into how people are using it. So the greener it is, the darker, that means those are dense forests, green as we imagine. The red areas are where people have settled. These are settlements. Then you have in between all the browns and the yellows. Those are actually places that are completely degraded. So if you see, we have a lot of yellow and brown. We have some brown, we have quite a bit of yellow. We have a lot of light green. Light green is nothing but open forest. So when people imagine Meghalaya, the first thought that comes into mind is green, nature, water everywhere. But, sometimes reality can be different. Here, the map shows us that while, yes, we do have 76% of the land as forest, but out of this, only 3% is actually dense forest. The rest is like either open forest or grasslands and things like that. And you can see that on this map, right? Okay. Now I'm going to show you one more map. This shows, earlier somebody had mentioned about the springs. Razi sir had mentioned that we rely a lot on surface water. In fact, springs are the go-to sources of water for almost all our villages. Can you go to the next slide, please? There you can see all the springs that we have mapped. So through our organization and our sister organizations. But I can tell you that this is not the full list of springs. We've been added for the last 5 years. And we've been able to cover about 55,000 springs across the state. And we estimate that there's going to be well over 1 lakh of springs by the time we're done with this exercise. So the whole point that I'm trying to show is, like already mentioned by Razi sir, that these are surface sources of water, and a lot of these are actually in danger because either you've seen the previous map that shows the degradation. Degradation has direct impact on the availability of these springs. We monitor them every month of the year, and we've been doing that for the past 4 years. Of course, the initial years, we made a lot of mistakes with how we are measuring the data, but we've improved over time. And now, if you look at last 3 years' data, you can actually see many of the springs are either depleting, they're on the verge of drying up, and especially the critical springs that communities are dependent on, we have seen them, suffering from these kind of issues. And most of these can actually be resolved, right? But the effort to resolve those, you need some unique approaches in, the context of hill states, indigenous communities, and various other factors that, decide these. Let's move to the next slide, please. Okay. Now I'll come to what we did. We learned this over time. We've implemented a number of externally aided projects. These are projects funded by, multilateral agencies, multilateral development banks, like your World Bank, your IFAD, ADB, KFW. So if you look at the approach, it's very simple. Initially, we tried to do so many things, but in the end, we realized that just 4 areas that, you need to pay special attention if you are going to succeed in this kind of endeavor. The first one is having a strong base to start with. Here I've mentioned capacity building and institutional strengthening. Especially for states like ours, hilly states, where villages are very remote. We have, somebody had mentioned in the previous panel that we have like around, on LGD shows we have around 6,900 villages. We have visited every single village that has people in them to conduct awareness and training, and we have found that there are around 6,700 plus villages that have people in them. And some villages have as many or as little as 4 households. So we have many villages that are 4 households, 7 households, 10 households, and they are so isolated that trying to address each and every village's problem is going to cost a lot, right? So there's no way to do this centrally and hope that you achieve something. So what we've learned is you have to decentralize. If you're going to make any meaningful impact, it has to be a collaborative effort. So, which is why, again, I come to the first point. The strategy we generally use is we identify where do we want to intervene. We pick champions from those places. Actually, it'd be, a few people who can work, and we also pick the whole village as a unit to start with, because if you don't have buy-in from these communities, it's difficult to sustain your interventions, right? So with this, if you look, I've given a few numbers there, community institutions, for example. In our projects, we always start by creating, or leveraging on existing institutions. We have very strong institutions that were established under the Community and Rural Development Department. They're called Village Employment Councils. We don't have a Panchayat Raj system here. So we had to come up with an alternative institution to anchor a lot of the programs of the government. So we have these VECs that are very strong. Some of our projects leverage on these institutions. We add on to their capabilities, strengthen them, build them, train them, add resources, give funds, so they're able to pull this off. Where they're more specialized, where the work is more specialized, we go ahead and create entirely new institutions, but leveraging on people who have experiences from the various existing institutions. We would pull them together, from a biodiversity, a village level biodiversity council, or from, an NRM committee, or from things like that, bring them together and we form, a unit at the village. So this is very crucial for all our projects to begin with, because they then anchor all fund flow, they anchor all our implementation, our monitoring, and all these things. Then, to help streamline this, we have come up with standards for all the works that we do. I've written the development of technical manuals. Yeah, I'm sorry? Yeah, okay. So, I'll just this slide and I will end with this slide. So, we've developed a lot of these standards that we have called, which are basically manuals for people to be able to follow. That enables us to do decentralized work, right? And you see, we've trained there, I've mentioned 13,000 VCFs. VCFs are nothing but village community facilitators. We pick them up from the village, 2 to 3 youths from each village, and then we make them undergo like very rigorous training. And then these would then act as the extension for the government, at the village level. Because they're from the village, they stay there, we can then access there. In fact, currently the government has launched one more program called Village Data Volunteer Program, which is nothing but this extension of the same concept of village community facilitators, who are then equipped with tablets and internet, so that they can be at the village and help not only collect data for us, but also pass on information and basic services to the communities at the village. Then the next steps, of course, is like how do you size the problem? So here, like I already mentioned some of the things, ground truthing. Here we use a lot of technology too. We rely a lot on GIS platform, we use remote sensing, and we have something very special. We actually have developed apps that can be used on mobile phones and It's so easy to use that community members can use. One of the app is called CLART, Composite Landscape Assessment and Restoration Tool, which we did with Foundation for Ecological Services. This tool has actually enabled our communities at the ground to understand, okay, if I want to deal with water shortage, this is what intervention I should take up, and this is the location I should take up. So it helps provide some basic advisory for them to take decisions. In terms of implementation, MBDA, because of the flexibility I mentioned about, we are able to collaborate with various departments and bring in expertise in various forms and convergence of resources to be able to implement many of these projects that we are doing. In fact, as of now, under our own various projects, we have implemented more than 8,500 water-related interventions on the ground. And lastly, which is the most important, and the last point is about sustainability. So all these would mean nothing if you can't sustain efforts. Here in our state in particular, the most important thing for us is to create ownership amongst the communities. Because with that, we are able to continue efforts and continue to support them so that they grow these efforts. In this regard, we've come up with something which is the first in the country. I mean, there's the first of its kind. It's a statewide payment for ecosystem services. Somebody was, again, sir had mentioned about, how do we, put some value to the money, the water that we're consuming. So the payment for ecosystem service scheme that we launched is basically that. We are rewarding people who are conserving their forests with a commitment that they continue to do so for 30 years. And we are paying them money every year, up to about 15,000 per hectare per year. So that's the kind of thing that the government has committed to pay, and already the scheme is being committed for the next 5 years. Along with this, simultaneously, we are linking to carbon markets. The goal is that in the future, we can't always just pay from government coffers, but we can leverage on all these existing global green funds that exist, like the carbon credits market, to be able to bring in more incentives for communities to continue their conservation. So I think since time is a little short, I think I'm going to wrap my presentation here. So, and then maybe we can, if we have more questions later, we can continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's quite interesting presentation, and you have rightly highlighted the importance of decentralized approaches, strengthening of local institutions, convergence of resources, and use of technology as a way forward, especially to ensure source sustainability or water security. I think these are critical and important steps. With this, I would like to invite our next speaker, Kumari Yara Dingdo, Joint Mission Director, SRES. Please, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. The honorable moderator of this session.
And I would really appreciate if you could just conclude your presentation in another 6 to 8 minutes. Yeah.
6 to 8. I have a video also, sir, so if that is permissible after my presentation.
So because we'll have to conclude this session by 6:30 or 6:25.
Okay,
so,
sir.
yes. So I'd really appreciate if you could just conclude in another 6 to 8 minutes. Yeah.
Right,
Thank
sir.
you.
So with regards to source sustainability, I am representing State Rural Employment Society, which is a society under the Community and Rural Development Department. And my name is Yara Dingdo. I'm Joint Mission Director. I'll be talking in terms of the contribution of MGNREGA and talking about the source sustainability in terms of the efforts that have been made by our community, as our chairperson has mentioned earlier, that community also plays a very important role. Next slide, please. So when we talk about our sources, we sometimes tend to look only at the natural resources or the resources endowed by nature. And I would want to highlight also that for the purpose of water conservation and natural resource management of our community, we have also the community, which are the resources. We have the human resources. We have a definite budget under MGNREGA, which comes annually based on our proposal and our performance. We have capacity building, which equip our people further to understand better And also the ownership, a sense of ownership is a very, very important thing, and a sense of responsibility. Because if we lack these, whatever we try to impart knowledge or understanding, this would be a failure. Our coverage, next slide please. Our coverage in the state as a whole, we have 12 districts. We have percolated to almost all the villages in 52 blocks. We have Village Employment Council, which the previous speaker has mentioned also. The Village Employment Council, we in almost 6,406 villages in the state. And our registered people, or the workforce of MGNREGA, we have 12.33 lakhs. All these are responsible adults who are above the age of 18 years, and we also do include both men and women as part of this program. This being a program extended only in the rural areas, we have an issue with regards to the urban and semi-urban areas where population is higher, and also the programs are not being extended. Next slide, please. The area of action, we have been implementing MGNREGA from 2006 in the state, and all throughout the years we have been looking at major need of the community, which a priority has been rural connectivity. Whatever they do, they always come back to rural connectivity. If the villages are not connected, we never understand really the need to conserve water. And in 2016 onwards, with the focus being pushed from the Ministry of Rural Development to look at water and to look at natural resources, we started with the integrated natural resource management. And under this, we have a lot of activities ranging from plantation to nurseries to spring shed rejuvenation, where we conserve the springs, which has been mapped by the MBMA. We took those data and we act on those. We recharge the aquifers through construction of trenches, small trenches in the areas of the community or individual, and to educate our community further on the use of tools and technology, we have incorporated the GIS planning and mapping, where they would understand on what kind of activities are to be taken down the slope from plantation to trenching to a water harvesting structure. Next slide, please. When the Jal Shakti Abhiyan was launched in 2019, we conducted the participatory rural appraisal for all the VECs in our state. And if you look at the data, which you can see here, the biggest issue that the village themselves has mentioned and has committed and has also identified while conducting this exercise is the water scarcity and drinking water scarcity. This has been the major issue in 2019 when we conducted the participatory rural appraisal. And based on this activity which was conducted, we pump whatever activities that can be done, looking at these as the gap and the requirements in the community, we act on and we ensure that we have a proper strategy. Next slide. To strategize and to act on based on those challenges that has been identified by the community. As I have mentioned, 60% of our expenditure we push for the natural resource management and water-related activities. Under MGNREGA, the state is receiving more than 1,000 crore rupees annually, and 60% of that is our commitment towards nature, towards water. Another next step, which is a big decision taken by the state government, is to form the Natural Resource Management Committee at the VEC. This is to ensure that our community understand and also have a responsibility and a commitment towards nature by having a committee in its level. We encourage women leadership also, and we have convergence with other departments. There are 4 components of convergence. Through the technical convergence, we have the capacity building, gap funding, which can come from other programs, and livelihood component, which can come from other programs whenever we're required, especially for plantation. Next slide, please. Looking at this, our expenditure in the 5 years, we are able to say that more than 2,244 crores have been contributed by the community, by the department towards nature, towards water conservation. Next, please. Because MG Narije is a program where there are do's and don'ts, where there are activities that can be taken up and activities that cannot be taken up. So these are the types of assets that we have created, right from plantation to bunding to check dams to construction of water tank, community ponds, recharge pits, which I have mentioned earlier to revive and rejuvenate the water sources, wells, trenches, and underground dikes. These are the number of assets that we have constructed over the years. And from the inception of the program, we have constructed at least 65,000 assets which are related to water conservation and which are related to natural resource management out of the 2.9 lakhs assets that we have created, and which, with many more which are to be completed, we expect that the community would have more contribution and more understanding towards this cause. Next slide, please. In terms of leadership, as I have mentioned earlier, we also encourage women leaders to ensure that they also have a role and they also have a platform and a responsibility towards the community, towards nature. So in all the 6,406 VECs that I have mentioned earlier, we ensured that we have a good number of women leaders. In almost 6,400 VECs, we have about 4,491 women leaders. We don't call them as functionaries, as chairperson or secretaries anymore. By empowering them, we call them women leaders. So they will take the role in planning, in understanding what are the works to be taken up towards community and towards nature. Next, please. The expected outcome that we have is to provide a local solution. It might be something which our people have not understood, because we did have some interaction with the community, and they said, what is that global warming? What is climate change? We don't understand. It is the same to us now as it was when our fathers and our grandfathers have faced. The same thing is happening. So why are you talking about climate change? Why are you talking about all these issues which are not applicable to us? But if each and every community, each and every village will have an understanding that whatever role I play, whatever contribution I make would not only be a local solution, but it will act on the global problem, the global crisis. If our 6,000 villages can do something, can plant trees, if they can ensure that the water is recharged, the underground water is recharged, and if this story would go all out to the other states and other countries, it would be a lesson, and it would be something that others can also take and replicate to act locally for a problem which is a global problem. Next thing is we try to harvest the runoff water, as Dr. Razi has mentioned earlier, that most of the water in the state are usually the runoff water that goes to other neighboring states. So what we do, we try to harness whatever water is received in the form of rain. And additionally, we recharge the underground structure. We make the source sustainable to meet the growing demand. Sometimes when we interact with the community, they would say, yes, we do not deny that water has become a little not enough for our children than the way it was in my childhood. So by doing that, they understood that yes, there is a need to conserve and also to ensure that the sources are sustained, they are retained, and they don't die out. Awareness and ownership, those are the things that we try to incorporate to the people whenever we interact with them, so that they will understand that ownership of the land, ownership of the water, ownership of nature is something that each and every one of them would need to understand and pass on to future generation. Next, please. Some of the focus areas, the achievement and intervention that I would want to show through the program can be seen in these slides. Next, please. Strengthening the VEC. You might ask me why we are talking about strengthening of the VEC. By strengthening the VEC, because there are a lot of inactive villages who did not take up work. Yes, sir. Next, please. There are a lot, if you can see the graph, from 4,550 villages which were not active. Not active means they are not doing anything and they are not contributing towards a cause. To look at the data which has come really down. So this means that more VECs are coming forward, more VECs are active. Next, please. Solution for climate change, as I have mentioned earlier also, we launched the Natural Resource Management Committee. This was done by the Honorable Chief Minister. And we go through a rigorous process of interacting with the community and then sitting with them and then convincing, of course, the higher authority to ensure that, to make them also come on board and have a common cause, saying that yes, we do need this community at the locality, at the village level, to ensure that we have a stronghold towards a cause. So till now we have 5,716 NRMC committees in the 6,000 villages. Next, please. So these are just photographs of our works which we have done. Next. Check dam to harness the water. Nurseries where we can start with for the plantation work. Afforestation. Again, plantation along the slope, the ridge to valley approach that we follow. Next. So these are the works that are being done by the community of Meghalaya through the Village Employment Council under MG Nariji. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. It was such an interesting presentation, and a program, an initiative like MGNRGA, how effectively it can actually solve some of the critical issues that Meghalaya has very well demonstrated. Especially what you have concluded, that local solutions to address some of the global problem. That is something that Meghalaya have effectively demonstrated, that this can be achieved through community participation, through smaller water conservation activities, and through empowerment of institutions. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this presentation. Now, I would like to invite Shri Nipendra Kumar Sharma ji to share his experiences from Assam. Over to you, sir.
Good evening. Respected moderator of this session and distinguished panelists and the August gathering. Before starting the presentation, I would like to focus on the tagline of the conclave: let your ideas grow. Focusing on this tagline, let me hope all the ideas, all the experience shared in this conclave today and likely to be shared tomorrow, all this will be taken back into respective places in a such specific manner. It will be tried, and I hope it will help definitely in the respective sector to for reaching the unreached. And the topic is a sustainable approach in drinking water supply sector in Assam. Again in silo. In the morning session, Dr. Shakil Ahmed said that water sector is talked about not in a holistic manner. It is presented in the silo. So I am also doing the same mistake. I'm going to present this in silo, drinking water sector, sustainability of the drinking water sector. Okay, in the morning, in the first half, taking this clue from what Deborsi Mukherjee madam stated, that water use efficiencies. So water use efficiency, taking that clue, I am very glad to note that, Honorable Chief Minister stated that he made a request that there should be a interdepartmental committee to look after the water sector issues. So that's a very vital issue. And in the presentation also, in the Cambodia presentation, we have seen that water resource management is being looked after by 11 departments. That's the essence of the approach. And today in the earlier presentation, Commissioner Shah, Government of Meghalaya, he has also stated that different issues are being taken care of with convergent approach with different departments. But thing is that is not happening in many cases. So let me request that in the Shillong declaration, there should be one recommendation that interdepartmental committee should be constituted each and every state to look after the water sector issues. And finally, let me suggest one suggestion from my side. Let there be coordination committee among all states in the northeastern states. You see, we do share our boundaries. Meghalaya share boundary with Assam, Assam shares boundary with Meghalaya, Assam shares boundary with Arunachal Pradesh, even international boundary with Bhutan, even with Mizoram, even with these things, Nagaland. But thing is that there is hardly any meeting on water sector in this among these states. But unfortunately, there are meetings among the districts to take care of the law and order situation, but not the water sector issues. So my request, my suggestion on this is conclave, there should be a suggestion. I don't know how many of you will suggest, will second that proposal. My proposal will be there. There should be a proposal to form an interstate coordination committee on water uses council. That sort of committee should be formed among the interstate, and then only that, okay, in the areas, in the boundary of the two states will be solved so far as this water sector issues are concerned. So this is my suggestion and to be taken care of in the as an aftermath of this conclave. Okay, going back to my presentation. Next slide. Well, the broad objective, okay, drinking water security. The drinking water security, already I have stated that, okay, from drinking water perspective, it is availability, accessibility, and safety. Mere availability of the water will not serve the purpose. Mere accessibility will also not serve the purpose if there is no safety. If the safe drinking water is not facilitated, that availability of the water, because Assam, basically my state, there is as of now, that water scarcity is not that much of prominent these things. So in that case, but there is a scarcity of safe drinking water. There might be a scarcity. That's why to ensure the drinking water security in a holistic manner, we'll have to take care, we just take the objective of ensuring availability, accessibility, and the safety. And the pipe water supply scheme to the last mile connectivity, and also the social mobilization to ensure that no supply day and to resist the non-revenue water. To resist the non-revenue in the morning session, and Dr. Shakil Ahmed said that, okay, 30% of the non-revenue water for leakage. So if we can ensure that community management for those as an ownership basis, then we can at least resist that leakage, non-revenue water to a great extent. And also the 60%, and it was stated that 60% water resources are under threat. Well, the water resources are under threat because of already in the presentation of the Meghalaya, it is stated there are some environmental issues, there are some pollution issues. All those issues can be addressed quite efficiently if that community come forward, community takes the ownership of those infrastructure. That is why community mobilization is very important and to address those issues. Next. Okay, goal is, one goal I would like to say, okay, as of now, the Jal Jeevan Mission is being implemented with 55 LPCD, but in years to come, in days to come, we'll have to move into the next step is our 70 LPCD. Then only it will be more beneficial for the, to reach the unreached. Next. Well, now present status with some challenges with respect to Assam and with respect to drinking water sector. So some areas are affected with fluoride contamination. Assam, that water sector mostly dependent on groundwater. Of course, there are certain areas where surface source are also used for supplying this water. But thing is that those water supply schemes which are based on the groundwater, there are certain areas which are affected by fluoride and which are affected by arsenic contamination. Of course, these are addressed as of now. I don't know in the near future, again, if it comes up, then it will be an issue and will have to be taken care of. Next. Okay, the source sustainability, you see in Assam, already I have told you that Assam, there is no such prominent water scarcity except in some pockets, in some rain shadow areas, in some pockets. Otherwise, you see groundwater air potential, as per the HGM map, hydrogeomorphological map, it is too much of, you see, 22 lakhs 47,883 hectometer. So, and virtually it requires no research. But perennial surface sources like rivers, springs, and other traditional sources are mostly available. But in some sources and in rain shadow areas, there are some threat from the source drying up, and also depletion of the sources, and also the environmental management issues are also there. The location-specific impacts of the climate change leading to factors like source drying, already I have source drying up. There are certain areas where that reports are coming to us, because recently we have established a GIS-based data center in our state, and we have started collecting the data and monitoring those data. While monitoring those data, then we have come to know that, okay, there are certain areas where depletion of groundwater level are of course, in a localized manner, in some pockets, it is coming up. So these, some threats are there. And suitable technological options are also necessary when there are source sustainability is a concern out of the chemical contamination if it is groundwater managed system. Reducing water quality in the absence of any substance, because in our state, whenever there is a chemical contamination, be it fluoride, be it arsenic, to our groundwater sources, our immediate option is that we go for our surface sources. But sometimes, if that surface source is not available, or if that surface source is under threat, then it becomes a problem that, and we need to look for advanced treatment processes. That is also another challenge. Next slide. You see, source sustainability in some hilly areas. In Assam, there are few districts, totally hilly areas, Karbi Anglong, Dima Hasao. So in those districts, the source drying up, Senjin river course, Senjin stream discharge, and also the climate change are noticed in some areas. And also water supply in shore areas, some riverine areas are there where the people are inhabiting. In those areas, some issues are there, the shifting of population, unsustained in water intake, and then scope of some sustained technologies are necessary, and that are being investigated. We have not yet finalized what type of technologies will have to be utilized in those shore areas where it is shifting, which are affected by shifting population for these things. And also, this last point is very, very important for us. You see, already I have stated that our state has an international boundary with Bhutan. But in this case, there is an issue of transboundary issues, and that transboundary issues need to be taken with the government of Bhutan, and for channelization and to facilitate suitable release of the water from the hilly streams crossing the international boundaries. But there is an issue, why I have stated, you know. So in case of, so far we have experienced, okay, during rainy season, when there is surplus water is being released is abundantly and leading to in the downstream area in around 3 districts, and it causes flood. But during in the winter season, when there is a water scarcity here, the water is stored over there, water is not being released. So our stream, which were dependent on that hilly stream from the Bhutan, are not fed with the water. So sir, there is a transboundary issue. So, and this, because of this issue also, we are having certain challenges to maintain that drinking water supply sector.
So please conclude.
Yeah, sure. Next slide. O&M issue, okay, I would like to skip this. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, the hilly area, already I have mentioned that, okay, this is the Dima Hasao. This is the coverage pattern as of now. Next slide. This is the coverage pattern, village-wise coverage pattern in the Dima Hasao area. Next slide. It is the Karbi Anglong area coverage pattern. Next slide. The village-wise coverage pattern. I'm not going to elaborate on the next slide. Okay, this is the strategic approach is being followed from 2015 by Assam government and to address the water supply issues, to go for fully covered population and to reduce the partially covered population, and also along with that, the home connection is being increased. And in the year 2019, when Jal Jeevan Mission has been declared, it gets it gave a boon to our this strategic approach, and finally it is shooting up like this. And next slide. So for initiative part, that you see for environmental management and issue is very the scheme which are dependent on our river sources. In the upstream side, if there is a dumping of the waste, it becomes a problematic for our that water supply schemes. That is why that environmental management is an issue, and we are taking up with Water Resource Department. That is why interdepartmental meeting might be helping might help in this regard. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, now I would like to finally conclude with some few slides and what we are doing for this data monitoring. This is the data monitoring. Already I have stated that very recently we have established one GIS-based data center. In the morning session, Honorable Chief Minister stated that in the Meghalaya also some sort of data incubation center is being set up with the help of ANISEC. He has stated like that. So in our state, we have stated that data center, and we have started entering this is a real-time data monitoring of the groundwater exploration. Next slide. So these are the lithological digitized. We have lithology of the groundwater deep to wells are being digitized. This will give us groundwater exploration data at any point of time. Next slide. And these are some hydrogeological model. I'm not going to detail on this regard because time is very short. I would like to conclude. Next slide. So these are some preliminary activities. We have just collected the data. We are there are miles to go about the conclusion of those. The data is being monitored in this manner. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, this is for Dima Hasao digital elevation model. Next slide. This is the slope map of the ground of Dima Hasao, the both the hilly area. I have referred since they are hilly area. Next. This is the land use coverage pattern. Same type of 3 slides are there for Karbi Anglong. Next slide. This is for Karbi Anglong, lithological these things. Next slide. This is for Dima Hasao, lithological, geomorphological map. Next slide. So this is actually not for Dima Hasao, this is for Karbi Anglong, digital elevation model. Next. Showing the drainage channel also. And this is the slope map. Next slide, finally last slide, this is the land use, land cover. So all these are our preliminary activity based on a GIS-based data collection. From this, we hope it will help us monitoring the water sector issues, be it the shortage, be it there is any issues regarding threat from the source drying up, threat from the depletion issues, all these things are going to help us eventually. So finally, last 2 slides, I suppose. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So there is one more approach we have taken, that 24/7, and so for that, with that concept, in some districts with the FSTC, we are going to provide some 200 or 300 liter or water tank. So that water remains over there, there is no wastage of water. Whenever there is water is supplied, the water will remain in that tank. Each and every household, they will get water at any time whenever it is required. So that concept is also being implemented in some districts. Next. So finally, the resource mobilization is very important, be it for our WNM approach, be it for our strategic action plan. Next slide. Thank you very much. My tagline is "Wash for all for wash." Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for a detailed presentation and also sharing the insights, especially PHE Assam's efforts towards source sustainability. With this, I think we'll have to conclude the session, as hall is to be prepared for the next event. But if there is any pressing questions, maybe we can take just one question. So if there is a question coming from the audience, otherwise we can conclude the session. No, yeah. So thank you so much for the insights that you have shared during this session. I think the varied presentation coming from PHE Meghalaya, coming from PHE Assam, and then from Meghalaya Basin Development Authority, ICR, and also from State Rural Employment Society. All these presentations have given us a sort of confidence and insight that yes, solutions are there. We can achieve a sort of long-term sustainability at scale. Personally, I'm quite impressed the way these institutions are actually taking up different aspects of water conservation, so sustainability, then empowerment of institutions, and then integration of latest technology. So much to learn from these presentations, and I'm pretty, after this session, I'm quite confident that yes, these are the way forwards that was presented, and definitely if efficient management practices are adopted, then we can definitely achieve source sustainability. With these words, I would like to conclude this session. Thank you so much, and I would also like to extend our sincere thanks to everyone sitting in this room for your patience and for your time. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you to our moderator, Shri Asad Umar, and the esteemed members of the panel for adding to the depth and meaning of the gathering this